Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. As always, today we've got a really awesome show. We've got Dino and Brian from Santiment. We're going to be talking about a data-driven approach and their platform to get that data, to figure out what's going on in the market across a wide variety of assets. So Brian and Dino, thanks so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Really quickly right up front, just so folks can get familiar with who you are.
So,
Love to do some quick intros. So Brian, do you want to kick it off and then we'll pass it to
on
Dino?
YouTube. So
You bet. Yeah, so I'm the Director of Marketing here at Santiment. We study on-chain and social metrics, have data for up to, I think, over 2,000 different assets now.
On the
And
EMA
we
line at the moment.
at Santiment really
It's the
do
50
our mission is to ensure that we are giving the most comprehensive analysis with any biases completely eliminated on
nice red juicy
how the markets currently look in their current conditions, whether they're bullish or bearish divergences happening, and what people should be looking for.
I think if I look at multiple
Awesome.
time frames here,
And
this
Dino,
is the
you want to
4-hour
follow that
VWAP
up? I'd love to hear about your
below
background as
zero,
well.
red dot.
Sure.
And
I've been with
through multiple
Santiment
time
for
frames
2
now,
years
they're
now.
all
I'm one
going
of
to
the
look
market analysts, and I
very,
do help with content and
very
business development
similar.
as well. Essentially, Sentiment was launched back in
terms of
2016.
targets,
Really, the idea
what are
behind
we
Sentiment was
aiming
that
for?
at that
What
time, I
would be
think
the target we
still
should be looking
for
for?
a lot of people,
I think
that
the
this rings
first
true
thing
today
is
as well is that TA was the primary sort of
that
way that
is
people
the,
analyze the market and market behavior.
50 EMA.
And in
I think we'd be looking
2016,
to
our
try
founder
and
just
get
thought,
down-
well, there's
well,
a whole
down
lot
to
of
here,
alternative
actually,
data sets
is
in
whether we
crypto
can
that are
actually get
unavailable
down
in TradFi
below.
traditional
I
finance
certainly think there's
that
a
are
lot
just
of
not being
liquidity
utilized properly.
here.
So we've sort of
I
built
don't
our
know if
entire
I've got
platform
the right,
around 3 of these sources. One is
chart
on-chain
in
data,
front
which
of
we
me.
collect
I
directly
will,
from the blockchain, so
attempt
there are no
to bring
intermediaries. The second one, something that we're
something which I've
quite
not really
unique by,
prepared.
at least still, is social data.
But
So what we
can
do is
see
we
the
currently have
liquidation zones.
we track around
underneath.
1,500 different cryptocurrency related
But
social
what
media
rate
channels. So
of-
these are crypto Telegram groups, crypto subreddits, Twitter accounts that are of value, other sources of information, some of them hidden from Google, professional trader chats. And so we listen into those conversations and we collect,
if I can
I think,
remember
hundreds
my
and thousands of
password.
messges on a daily basis.
No, I
And we've
can't.
developed a few
I'll have
metrics
it
on top of
available,
that
when I
data
get
set,
back to
which,
this.
we've
But
backtested so
essentially,
far, and
there
it
are
seems
a
like it
ton
definitely
of
has
liquidation
some alpha
points
in
and
specific
around
conditions. And then the last
pretty
sort of
much from
source
where
of
we are
information that
now
we've built our
to
platform around
40K.
is development
I
activity
think
data. So
this is
I don't
in
think
part
dev
because we've
activity is
moved up
necessarily very
remarkably
interesting for
quickly.
people that are
And
maybe
I think there's two
day
things.
trading,
Firstly
but I
is-
think
is
it's
I think
very
we've-
interesting as like a due
We're at a
diligence
point of
value investing
exhaustion.
indicator.
You
Like
can see
if
this
you're
is
looking
an
into a
RSI
project
meter
that you
here,
want to be
and this is showing
into for
overbought,
years on end, I
quite
think development
considerably,
activity is a
which
very
is
good gauge
unsurprising.
of
We can
how
see
committed a
the Keltner
project
band,
is to
that
actually
we are
staying true to
getting
their
up
roadmap,
towards,
pushing new features,
the top
whether
end
they're
here.
still
I
investing
think,
into
the other
their
thing I would probably turn
protocol,
around and
or
say
they're
is,
sort of starting to fizzle out.
we've
So those
moved
are
up
the
so
three main
quickly,
sources of
there
info.
will be a
I think we'll mostly be
vacuum
focusing here on some of the more
liquidity
basic on-chain
available
metrics
here.
and some of our
So
social
people
metrics
will
as
have
well.
been
But
opening longs
yeah,
at
for everyone,
multiple
anyone
points.
interested in more, just check out
And,
app.sentiment.net
exchanges or
and
whoever's,
start from there.
trying to move the market.
Awesome.
will see
Yeah, and I
all
think
of that
you
available
led into it
information.
perfectly. I think for most people,
and what
seeing is
they'll do
believing, right? And
is
understanding
they'll
what
be looking to
tools are at
drive
your
the market
disposal,
back
using
down
sentiment to make
reclaim it
sense
all.
of what's going on in the
Now,
market, to
where
maybe
are
figure out
interesting
where the
points
market
to
might
try
be going.
and,
Of course, there's
get
no
to.
perfect indicator, but there's lots of data here to work with. So, Brian, I think you're going to show how the tool works and some of the options here across some assets.
Yeah, you bet. So we're looking right now at our main platform, app.santiment.net. This is essentially our home base for all on-chain and social metrics that are, key to understanding what's happening at any given moment in the markets. What we have highlighted here, and I'll full screen it so we can get a better look, is
I had one video that was accidentally playing in the background. Hopefully that has rectified it. And while I'm doing that, I'll see if I can bring up High Block Capital, because the information in it is really useful to see, and it's good to see just how much available liquidity there is there, and why the market is trying to actually move itself back to those points. So I've actually finally got into it. So let me see if I can bring that up onto the screen. Right. hopefully that has fixed that sound issue. So let me just go to tools, liquidation levels, and in particular I find this really interesting. It's a little slow and it's a little bright on the screen, so you'll have to bear with me, but in it you'll see how much liquidity is really beneath us and why we absolutely will need to head back down to reclaim that. Okay, this is a little sluggish, so just bear with me. But the information on here is really useful, and what it's really useful to see is why the market moves in particular directions. Well, that's a bit unfortunate. It is struggling at the moment. It is quite a lot of information that is contained on the page. I'll try and be a little bit better prepared. I didn't actually prepare ahead of this stream. Hopefully it will come back to life. Here we go. And so what you can see here on the screen, you can see some shorts that will be sitting out there at various points up here in blue. But then you can see all of these longs that have been open, and you can see how much has been left underneath the place where we've just vacated. So this is a little sluggish, and you can see here at the bottom, this is showing the imbalance between longs to shorts, and you can see it is extraordinarily long. So the amount of available open positions is extraordinarily high, and unless there is a mega move where the market wants to move to a particular position, it wants to hit an all-time high, or if there is a huge piece of news that has come out, largely the market moves to reclaim the liquidity. That's largely what it's doing. It's scooping this up. And so if you look here, all these positions that have been open, there is no way that the market is going to allow, that's $151 million worth of longs there, just at 25x. There will be a huge amount of liquidity that will be sitting here that will need to be reclaimed. Now, at what point is enough? Okay, and I think we can probably look at the 40k region as being a potential point of support. I think this will go to have we really truly broken out of that downward trend that we're in for right away from mid-November right the way through to literally only a few days ago, actually having now retested some important levels. Are we now rejecting? If I go back to the trading view chart, see if I can pull up the right chart here. If I go to the weekly, what is really interesting is I think we've come up here across, I think, the 50 EMA on the weekly, and we've rejected and we've come quite a bit down. And I think this is going to be an important point to get across in order to then become bullish. I think an important point really, I was looking at a number of levels across different time frames, and I think 47k would have felt like we were quite bullish, and I think I was looking at a number of different EMA positions. So if I go to I think 200, where does that end up being? So if you look at there, this is a fairly significant position. That's in and around just below 47k. I think that would be quite significant for us to be able to hit. The fact that we've rejected off the weekly says we don't really have that level of momentum. The fact that so many of the time frames are looking quite bearish. So what do I expect is going to happen? I think we'll come back down. I think we'll reclaim some of that liquidity. I think on these kind of time frames, on a VMC or market cipher, I think we'll end up building a nice trigger wave, and that might fuel us to 47k. I think when you go back to like a 4 hour, you can see that we're quite extended across the Keltner band, and therefore because we're continuing up here, at some point price just needs to relax and come back down, and it will needs to cool off slightly. It might be, and the reason why I was looking at around 40k, you can see here, we've got the 200 EMA on a 4 hour, just sitting right there. That's 40.9. Can I see us come down to it? Absolutely. Perhaps get a bounce off that, and that might then be the springboard to them, go on to make, a higher high. So I think that's entirely possible. I don't think this means that we're suddenly going down to the 30Ks again. There is still a lot of liquidity available down in the 30s. Remains to be seen about whether we'll come down that far. The fact that the weekly is looking quite good, particularly on the oscillator, green dot, needs a few days to be able to confirm. Once that's confirmed, we might think of being quite bullish, and we'll see how we get on from that point. I would turn around and say on this trend meter here, if we get above, I think I've moved that EMA line, but that EMA line that was sitting over here, if we got back above that, we'd probably be looking at quite a bullish set of trend meters there, and that would be really positive, particularly on the weekly, and I think that would be quite good news. I think the only word of caution really, and the reason why I put is this a bull trap, is you've got to think of the market movement as being a bit of a game, and I think the way to almost win is to counter trade. I'm not saying right now we should we're going down, should we be putting in a long, but what I mean by that is, if I go back to the 4 hourly, we've been pumping for a good couple of days now, and if anyone got in on that, there's some good times. You get this big pump, then you get a slightly smaller pump, then you get a final leg, and then it starts to come down, and it often happens in threes. And really, that final one often is luring people in. The people who've missed out over here, retail investors, they do look to try and that fear of missing out, and ultimately the market maker or whatever you want to look at it, the market forces, they want to lure people in, and once they have, it's a bit of a snatch and grab. They're gonna pull the rug out, and that's the reason why we can suddenly have quite a fast movement down to reclaim that liquidity. And it's really, once everyone is selling, that's where actually we want to be looking for an opportunity to get back in. And that's where things like support and resistance, the Keltner bands, are all very useful, because actually what it is how do we move back towards the EMA lines. And the EMA lines are effectively just dynamic support and resistance, and therefore, because they're dynamic, they're constantly moving, but they're also like a magnet. Price is attracted to them, and typically what will happen is they might run and sit alongside it, and then there will be some level of volatility which will move price away from the EMA, and then at some point the EMA moves up towards it and price moves it back down to meet it. So this is what's going on. So I think what will be very interesting is whether this will hold, and I suspect it will. It is a reasonable level of resistance and support. So that's really what I'm looking for. So at this point, that's the gap just there that I'm looking for to come down. Looking at the weekly, it looks hard from here that even this will invalidate that green dot, and because I don't think it will invalidate it, I think we will see more. I think this will confirm at the end of the week, and we will see a little bit more of a movement to the upside. I think if you look at I don't know if I've got it here. I might have it. That's not really what I wanted to look at. If I look at the bull market support band, so if we go down to the is this on the weekly? So you can see on the weekly, we've kind of topped out here, and we're now still starting to come down. You can have the odd red day, but once you start moving down, of course it can reverse. It started to come down here and reverse there, but I'm optimistic that we will see this come back round, and I think that would be, once we start getting some bullish momentum back, I think that can be really positive news. That doesn't mean that as this comes back, we're suddenly going to hit all-time highs, right? I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it might mean that actually we start moving back up to the high 40s, the 50s, and I think when you look at maybe the logarithmic growth curve, actually probably isn't a bad way of looking at it. You can see that we are below this median line here. And actually, as we were getting down towards the bottom of this, and didn't quite touch that, but it got pretty close. Whether that might be deemed as being quite heavily undervalued for Bitcoin. And I think it was Plan B put out a tweet that said, I think because he had one of his models shows like a 50k range. Whether it was like we were 62% down or something from the all-time high, and whether it was a 62% discount or whether the model was wrong or whatever. And actually looking at this now and the way we're going up, this now looks like that was a discounted price for people. And of course, it's always that moment of, do you buy, do you not? Are we going to go down further? And that's now looking to be the bottom. If I zoom in here, you can actually see that, yeah, we've touched that, but only as a wick and come back down. We're coming back down. So, that is also showing as a level of support and resistance. So I think it's quite interesting now. I think we're in an interesting junction in terms of, can we hold? Can we move up? Will that 200 EMA hold and provide support around that 40k range? Will we go on to make a higher low and then a higher high? That would be really positive if we did, and if we do, that would be fantastic. If we don't, I think there is some liquidity we've got to reclaim. Apologies. I think there's a big question though about actually, is this a trap, and are we going to try and reclaim some of the liquidity? It's not the right page. Some of the liquidity that is available. So you can see here, there's masses. There's absolute masses. Probably a little bit less here because I think people were nervous. But you can see in and around. I mean, look here at this 40k. Look at all this liquidating 50x, 123 million, 165 at 100x. There is lots and lots. So even beneath 40k. There's quite a bit from around, I'd probably say 38 from that moment where we were going sideways and then moved up. So it's not inconceivable that actually the market does want to reclaim some of that. It depends on where it finds the most interest. If I go to tier 2, I find that to be a little bit easier to view. Hopefully this will load soon, but this is quite useful. I will wait because it did do this last time. It did. There we go. I mean, you can just see just how much. I mean, that's a wall of longs there. It's hard not to imagine that people don't want to try and reclaim that. And you look here, there are still some open shorts, but there's not a huge amount. I always maintain that the biggest whales are exchanges, and they're just not going to want to see all of these open positions just staying open like this. It's just really hard to imagine. So, I certainly think, down to 40k is very doable. I actually think, getting down to 38k is also very possible. Just looking at the huge amount of longs that are sitting out there, and the disparity between longs and shorts is so in favour of longs. It's hard not to imagine that's not going to get eaten down. And people will be opening shorts here. I'm quite sure they'll be opening shorts. Just, you can see now. Is there a danger that we could come up and snatch those? Of course there is. But what would you rather go after? A little bit here, or all of this, right? And that's the reason why I think that's the reason why when price goes up, it has to come down. Really, the market forces that it's like a game of Pac-Man. They're just trying to eat up as much of this liquidity as they possibly can, and they're going around and trying to scoop it up. So that's why that fear of missing out and getting in a bit late. Sometimes it's just better just to hold off, because price will reverse at some point. It has to. I was looking for probably 2 days for it to reverse because I didn't get in early enough. But once it did, we can make some good money in this short here. So I opened a short not long ago. In fact, I opened 2 shorts. One, I think got to like 140%. I took 50% profit, moved stop loss to entry. I think it was about 40 points. I think it was like 43.6k or something. Stopped out at entry. I got back in a little bit lower. I think it was around 80% profit because I was using max leverage. So that's quite positive, and you can see the bearish time frames, multiple time frames here, and it only makes me think, we are going to come back down. There's no question. It's just needing a little bit of time, to allow the position to kind of develop, and how much support is this really going to provide. That's my kind of overwhelming thought at the moment. But I think for the time being, I'm expecting us to come down, and maybe it's not going to happen today, or may not happen that quickly. But I certainly think over the next 24 hours. I would imagine that we won't be at 43.3k. I can only see us coming down. Don't know if we look on the daily. Not printed red dot. I mean, still got a little bit of, and that could be just cooling off, and that's only just started to go green. So, I might argue that we can still stay green. On there and move up, but maybe it might be more of a short term. But you can see, just in a few days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 good days. I know that one really didn't do much, and that was quite a small move, but that's quite a big move across 5 days, and I think that's quite positive. So yeah. We'll see how this plays out, but I'm looking for price to come down. There's no question. And for me, if I'm probably entering now, I'll be really looking for, maybe not on a daily, but I'd be looking at a 4 hour and trying to put a stop loss probably in and around here, just above the wick on that candle. If I zoom in here, I'd be looking to try and put a stop loss in around that period, and really I'd be looking to try and give it as much time as possible to kind of develop, because it'll need to try and work up some momentum to drop below this. I think this is on the 4 hour, and the 4 hour closes in 10 minutes. So I'll be very interested in the next, what happens in about 10 minutes time, and whether we can actually see us come down a little bit more. So that's what I'm looking for anyway. Well, hopefully that wasn't a completely terrible stream. Apologies for the issues at the start. First one, so bidding teething problems, and I hadn't really done a practice, so I'm sure you can see that it was a little bit rustic, to say the least. But thanks for sticking with me, and I hope this was useful. Thanks a lot.